There's a church in the valley by the wildwood, no lovelier spot in the day. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No spot is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. Come to the church in the wildwood, to the trees where the wildflowers bloom, where the parting hymn shall be chanted. We will weep by the side of the tomb. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No spot is so dear to my childhood as a little brown church in the vale. How sweet on a clear Sabbath morning to listen to the ringing bell. Its tones so sweetly are calling. Oh, come to the church in the vale. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No spot is so dear to my childhood as a little brown church in the vale. From the church in the valley by the wildwood, when day fades away into night, I would fain from the spot of my childhood wing my way to the mansions of light. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No spot is so dear to my childhood as a little brown church in the vale. Sowing in the morning, sowing seeds of kindness, sowing in the noontide and the dewy, waiting for the harvest and the time of reaping. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Sowing in the sunshine, sowing in the shadow, fearing neither clouds nor winter's chilling breeze. By and by the harvest and the labor ended, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Going forth with weeping, sowing for the Master, for the lost sustained our spirit often grieve. When our weeping's over, He will bid us welcome. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves.
So this is the day of Pentecost in the worship rhythm of the church. This is the day that we celebrate the birth of the church, the beginning of the church. And so there's a lot of ways to celebrate that. Some of us have wore our red this morning. I've served churches before that we'd have a birthday cake on Pentecost. to remind ourselves it was the birthday of the church. I remember at annual conference a few years ago, we were there on Pentecost Sunday, which was really nice to be able to have that worship in Stewart Auditorium with all the different churches represented from our annual conference. And I remember the altar had red and white streamers. We had this big dove image, and it was just really, really quite beautiful, very festive. When you came in, you got this real sense that this is a different kind of day. This is a special day. Pentecost is valuable for us. It's 50 days after Easter for us. It sort of ends the Easter cycle of the church, and it's important for us because it's an opportunity for us to remember who we are. Now, really, we do that every Sunday, but there's something special about Pentecost to remember who we are as the church. Now, I've been in the life of the church most of my life, and I've been in church leadership roles for a good part of my adult life as well. And I know how easy it is in the church to be distracted by many things, many good things. And we spent a lot of time, you folks were working on getting the design and everything ready for this building long before I came. And then I know my first year here, it was the building of the church and this church building, and we're just so focused on that. And now we're focused on paying off the debt, and so we're thinking about that. And those are important things to think about and require some energy and some prayer. And we're, like a lot of United Methodist churches, are in a season of transition. So we're thinking about that and the implications of that for Jennifer and her family and for us as the church. And so we've got so many things to think about. And I know how easy it is to forget who we are in the midst of all that. A church gathering can be a lot of things. It can meet a lot of social needs. It can be a place where we can get a really neat breakfast and hear some really cool music. And it's a place where we can just enjoy being together, and that's all good stuff. We can be mindful of many good things, and Pentecost kind of calls us back. It's about identity. It's about who we are. We are the Spirit-birthed, Spirit-led, Spirit-sent forth, baptized body of believers, the church. So I like Pentecost. Pentecost is important for me. It's important for me to refocus my own heart and life, and I think it's for us as the church that opportunity to remember our identity. Identity is key, right? I think really to some extent that's what we do every Sunday. We come to worship, and we come to hopefully remember who we are, because as we leave this gathering and get out into the world, it's easy to be distracted. It's easy to forget who we are. It's easy sometimes to look no different than the world. We can blend in really easily. So Pentecost reminds us of something essential. We are the church. And we are the church not because we have created the church. We are the church because the church is God's idea. We are the church because of God. So today I want to invite you simply to bask in that mystery with me for a few minutes as we think about this story that Patsy read. And you're welcome with all the words. You drew the short straw on all the names today, but you did a beautiful job with that. As we think about this story, I want to first remind you where we were last week. If you were with us last week, it was the ascension of Jesus we looked at. If you remember that story, Jesus told the disciples to stay in Jerusalem until you have been clothed with power from on high. Well, today we look at the power that has come from on high. And so the ascension is wed to the story of Pentecost because it's the physical body of Jesus that leaves on ascension, making way for the spiritual body of Jesus, the church. In the physical bodily absence of Jesus, we have the spiritual body called the church that begins on the day of Pentecost. So the story, it's a powerful story, and it begins, they were all gathered together in one place. Gathered together in one place. I don't want us to miss that. There's something about gathering together in one place. There's something when the church gathers. Remember what Jesus said in the Gospel of Matthew, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. So whether you know it or not, you allow us to have the presence of Jesus in our midst by your gathering today. There is no small gift when the church gathers. And let me challenge our language a little bit, because we often say we're going to church. I love what Marva Dawn said in The Royal Waste of Time, a female Christian theologian who challenged that way of talking. She said, it's bad theology to say I'm going to church, because church is not a place we go. Church is who we are. So wherever you are throughout this week, there is the church. And if you really kind of think about it, if church is somewhere we go, then it's somewhere we leave. But no matter where you are, whatever setting you are in, there is the church, because you are the church. So they're all gathered together in one place, and I love that. Never forsake the gathering together. The Apostle Paul reminds us there's something about gathering together. So I want to celebrate that and want to affirm that. I want to thank you for being here and being a part of this gathering today. And then from heaven, this mighty violent sound of a violent wind rushing from heaven. You get the trajectory of the wind. This is not an east to west kind of flowing wind. This is top down wind. What is happening here is of God. It is coming from heaven. This is not a wind that just kind of trickled in from Jackson County. This is a wind that is coming from the heavens. This is God about to do something that only God can do in this gathered assembly. I love the fact that the word is violent. A violent wind. This is the kind of wind that changes things. It's the kind of wind that knocks down walls. It's the kind of wind that transforms lives, that destroys the demonic powers. This is a wind that is violent. I love that. And then, as the story goes, there's this strange imagery of these tongues of fire, and they begin to speak in these other languages. Now, this is not the foreign tongue that was a legitimate New Testament gift where you speak in a language that only God can understand. The Greek word is glossolalia. That's not what it's talking about here. This is people speaking in other languages that the gathered assembly can understand. And what a gathered assembly it was. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Gainesville and Atlanta and places like Clayton and Franklin and Mesopotamia and Rome and Cretans, and all these people hear the mighty deeds of God in languages that they can understand. Hearing of God's movement in the world in a way that they can understand it. Now, we all speak basically the same kind of language here, good Southern English, right? Most of us have that knack. We can speak good Southern English. But here's what I know to be true. You can speak to people in ways that I'll never be able to. You can communicate to people that see you in a place of credibility and trust that I will never be able to have that level of trust. I'll always be the pastor, the preacher. I'll always be the person in that role who's supposed to say churchy kinds of things. You have an authenticity with people. You speak a language with your friends and your family that I'll never be able to fully speak. You hear what I'm saying? And I love the fact in this story that when there's this suggestion that, well, maybe they've just been drinking a little bit too much, maybe that's what's going on. And this was a big festival, the Festival of Weeks, this Pentecost festival, and so there will be some wine flowing, but Peter reminds them, look, we don't start drinking at this time of the day. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. This is not about wine. This is about something that God is doing. And he goes back to that Old Testament prophecy of Joel. And Peter interprets that these are the last days. Doesn't mean necessarily the days are about to end, but this is God's next chapter. This is what God is doing now. And so he refers back to the writing of Joel. And I love this imagery. Don't you love this imagery that Joel offers, that Peter quotes? In the last days, God declares, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Male and female, the young and the old, and everybody will prophesy. Everybody will start talking about the mighty deeds of God. Here's what I want to encourage you to think about today. You know something about the mighty deeds of God. You've got a story. We have a shared story. We gather together to remember our shared story as the church, to remember who we are, but you've got an individual story too. You've got a story about a time when you were lost and undone, a time when you were about to give up hope, a time when you were ready to throw in the towel. You've got a story when somehow you just made it to the end of the day and you're not quite sure how. You've got a story about God's mighty deeds of power. And the Spirit of God, unleashed upon the followers of Jesus to birth the church, has given you an ability to speak. I want you to feel the power to speak today, beloved. Now, don't start to preaching. Now, the only time I can preach is while I'm up here. People don't want me preaching except at the appointed hour. So you got to be careful about that preaching stuff. But you've got a story to tell. And I just invite you to know your own story. To think about your own story. Think about how God has moved in your life. I want you to think about the violence of God's wind that has changed you in those places. You know the story of, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Everybody know that story? Some of you know the story? Carson could come up here and tell us all about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But I'll take it from here, Carson. I'm good. So there's that moment where, and Aslan is the big lion that represents God, right? And so there's this question by the children about Aslan, this big lion. Is he dangerous? Oh, the answer comes back, yes, he's very dangerous. But he is very good. So don't mess with this God. Don't trifle with this God who can breathe forth the violent wind to change things. Maybe some of us are here today and there are things in our heart that the violent wind of God wants to topple. Pentecost reminds us this is not about us, it is about God and what God is doing in the world. That's what the church is called to be. I love this imagery on Pentecost, and I'm very mindful that when we come to church on a Sunday morning, we don't expect those kinds of things to happen, right? We don't come in with our crash helmet and our seatbelt buckle fastened. We don't expect too much to go on. I shared with you, I know last year, so I'll be brief. I won't give the whole story, but it's just a story that for me has made me think of Pentecost differently. And this was not a Pentecost Sunday, so we hadn't scheduled the Spirit to appear in a particular way that Sunday. But it was a Sunday at my last church, and that church had for about 18 months before I came, and 2 years after I got there, was divided. There had just been some brokenness, and one thing I've learned about the church over the years is that brokenness lingers. Mistrust lingers, and the more intimate those relationships, be they family or church, the longer it takes to heal. I can bear witness. I've seen it. Know what it looks like. And so I came into a place where there was a great deal of mistrust between people, and there were factions, and I was trying to figure out how, as the pastor, I could sort of bridge that. And I wasn't having much success. We weren't growing out of that. And I was getting weary, and my spirit was getting low. And so we scheduled a lay witness mission, which is this opportunity for people, other United Methodists from other congregations, to come and to spend a weekend with your church family. And we had workshops, we had prayer meetings, we ate a lot together, we had worship together. It really was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. For those of us who enjoyed churchy kinds of things, it was beautiful. We really enjoyed getting together and praying for one another. And a lot of people brought a lot of their hurts and their baggage, and they prayed. And it was beautiful for those of us that participated, but a very small percentage of us participated. We had promoted it in the life of the church for months and months, and I had done everything I could to promote it, but very few people were interested in it, and that was discouraging. So from Thursday evening until Saturday night, those handful of us who were involved, we really got a blessing out of it. But Sunday came, and the group was going to be leading worship, and then they would go on their way, and it was really a powerful service of worship. We had a college group that came in and did a skit, which was really well done. We had a really neat children's program. So there were a lot of really cool things in the worship, and it went on for about an hour and a half. And I served a Methodist church, and we Methodists get real nervous. But for some reason, it didn't seem to bother folks, so that was really nice. And so it came to the end of the service, and Gail, the lady who was in charge of, who was the lay leader of that, invited Kathy and I to come up, and she was just going to say a word of thanks to us for hosting them and have a prayer, sing the final hymn, go home. And as she had finished saying thanks to us, and she was about to announce the title of the hymn, I saw a hand go up in the back of the church, Roger's hand. And I said to Gail, Gail, I think Roger wants to say something. So Roger came all the way from the back of the church and came up and he took the microphone and he said, if I have hurt anyone in this church, I want you to know I am sorry. And the next 20 minutes are still a blur to me. I turned around and all of a sudden the altar was filled with weeping people. People who had been estranged were embracing. I had a young lady who motioned to me. She wanted me to pray with her. She didn't like me just because I wasn't the former pastor. So she didn't like me. And she told me that. She said, I'm sorry. Will you pray for me? I said, sure, yeah, we'll pray. A young man came up and gave his life to Christ right there in front of me. Gave his life to Christ right there in front of me. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It is the closest thing that I have ever seen, before or after, to an Acts chapter 2 moment. How do you describe something like that? I think Luke does as well as anybody. The sound of a violent wind found its way to Salisbury, North Carolina. And walls were toppled and tongues came. We were given new tongues to speak. We were given a new language of forgiveness, confession, understanding, and love. It's made me look at Sundays differently. Before I left my former church and came here, I preached a sermon entitled, I Never Saw Sunday Coming. And I reminded them that Sunday changed the way I looked at Sunday worship. That sometimes God moves in ways we cannot imagine or expect. I've come to believe that the Spirit of God is uncontrollable, uncontainable, unpredictable. The Spirit of God that has birthed you, the church. And I just want you to have a sense today of the power that resides within you. It is not a power that you have created, but it is a power that has been granted to you through the power of God. The physical body of Jesus left, and in place of that we have the spiritual body of Christ, the church. What did you watch? The royal wedding yesterday? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Kathy watched all 42 hours of continuous coverage and followed that up with 10 extra hours watching the Hallmark Channel. So she's got it. Reverend Michael Curry, who's the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church of the United States, really did kind of steal the show yesterday. If you haven't seen that, check it out on YouTube. He brought the gospel to bear in a powerful way. And as I was watching it, not live, I didn't watch the 42 hours of coverage. I did watch the YouTube sermon. I went back and watched that because I'd heard so much about it, so I wanted to see the sermon. And so as I watched that, I thought, man, that's a Pentecost sermon. As he invited us all to imagine this day when love truly rules the world. That day when there'll be no more hungry children. That day when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. That day when we will lay down our swords and shields down by the riverside. That day when there'll be room for all of God's children at the table. That's the work of the Spirit, beloved. That's the work of the church. Thanks be to God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So put your hand in the hand of the man who steals the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calms the sea. Take a look at yourself and you can look at others differently. Putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. Every time I look into the holy book, I want to tremble. When I read about the part where the carpenter cleared the temple. For the buyers and the sellers were no different than the fellas you and I profess to be. And it causes me pain to know I'm not the man that I should be. So put your hand in the hand of the man who steals the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calms the sea. Take a look at yourself and you can look at others differently. Putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. Mama taught me how to pray before I reached the age of 7. When I'm down on my knees, that's when I'm close to heaven. Daddy lived his life for 2 kids and a wife, and he did what he could do. And he showed me enough of what it takes to get you through. So put your hand in the hand of the man who steals the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calms the sea. Take a look at yourself and you can look at others differently. Putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. So put your hand in the hand of the man who steals the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calms the sea. Take a look at yourself and you can look at others differently. Putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. By putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee.